Welcome to the Cosmic Connection. What you're about to hear and see on this program may disturb you. Please keep an open mind, for you may find that the information disseminated on the Cosmic Connection different from anything in your past experience. The views and opinions on the Cosmic Connection are not necessarily those of the organization broadcasting this program. Neither are they the views of the government, which seeks to suppress the investigation of the subject of unidentified flying objects. These are not the opinions of hucksters and charlatans who co-opt the importance of this message by their vain attempts to rip off the public through fear and misinformation. The term which best describes this program is from the Latin, fiat lux, which means, let there be light.
This is Toronto Weather National Airport, information Delta. Toronto weather, 6,000 scattered, 14,000 scattered, visibility 25 miles. Temperature 62.12. Wind is calm, Toronto altimeter 29.90. Gas approach is ILS 23 left. Landing runway for VFR aircraft 23 right. Departure runway 23 right. For aircraft flying VFR in the Toronto area, approach sector is 23. Inform ATC on initial contact. You received information Delta.
Aircraft that said they were in intersection that would accept the intersection, say again. AC-337, roger. Right turn taxiway green.
Welcome to the Cosmic Connection. Sunday, November 13th, 1994, on the CAN network. My guest, as promised, Michael P. Lindemann. But first, ladies and gentlemen, no calls, please, tonight. We'd like to thank the La Costa Mexican Restaurant for their fine Mexican cuisine for our crew today. Also want to thank Roberto Aguilera and Chef Alex Gonzalez of the La Costa Mexican Restaurant out there at 7425 Southwest Boulevard, Portland, Oregon. Fine family restaurant. We want to thank them very much. Michael Lindemann is online. May we have him patched into the studio, please?
I think I'm here.
Mr. Lindemann, welcome to the program, The Cosmic Connection.
Glad to be here, Cosmo. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to read from your bio for just one moment. Michael Lindemann was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1949. He developed a lifelong interest in arms control, foreign affairs, and government policy. He earned a BA degree in psychology from Antioch University, followed by 2 years of study at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. He later combined his analysis and he later combined political and psychological interests as an educator, social analyst, and futurist. He is the founder and director of the 2020 Group, a private research organization studying forces that shape the future. He first examined the UFO controversy from the angle of its possible connection to Gopher weapons development and social policy. The UFO publications of the 2020 Group are intended to broaden public awareness and increase the legitimacy of public discussion concerning the entire range of claims surrounding UFOs and alleged human-alien contact. Special emphasis is placed upon the evidence and rationale for government-sponsored and social implications of genuine human-alien contact. Mr. Lindemann has been on the show, Sightings and Encounters. The books and videotapes by the 2020 Group include UFOs and the Alien Presence, 6 Viewpoints, 1991, UFOs and the New World Order, Global Situation, a 38-page manuscript and 85-minute cassette, and UFOs and the Global Situation, a 2-hour videotape. Mr. Lindemann, welcome to the Cosmic Connection.
Thank you, Cosmo.
Well, you have some interesting news to tell our audience dealing with a new project that you've been working on, sir.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think your audience will be the first radio audience to hear about an exciting new project. I'm very happy to say that I have begun to work with a group of people on a project to do high-level UFO-related research and education online in the computer environment, in cyberspace, as they say. We will be launching a new UFO forum, not just UFOs, actually, broader than that. It's called the Institute for the Study of Contact with Non-Human Intelligence, and it will be on the America Online Network. If any of your listeners are already hooked into America Online, they will find us there in a couple of weeks. There's a place in America Online in the education section called the Electronic University Network, and they can find the Institute for the Study of of Contact with Non-Human Intelligence will be there starting, we think, in about 10 days. They're just at the very last stages of getting it ready.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's good news. Now, I understand some of the individuals that have been accompanying you on this project are yourself, John Carpenter, abduction researcher, who I believe is in your new video here. Is that correct?
John Carpenter is not in my new video, no, but I have a very, very good connection with John. I think John's done excellent work. His abduction research is very important, and yes, John will be involved. I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited that Linda Howe will be involved. She's very strongly enthusiastic. We have Carla Turner involved, another abduction researcher and a fine author. We anticipate that Stanton Friedman will be involved.
Wonderful.
It's going to be a good lineup of people. And I want to emphasize something to your listening audience. We believe that there are many types of human contact with non-human intelligence. I myself have been very strongly, you might say, preoccupied with claims about UFOs and what we term alien contacts, alien intelligence, and I think that this is one of the most important things occurring on planet Earth today. However, I'm also aware that a whole different group of people have contacts with other kinds of intelligence, including what we might term angels.
Sure.
And also there are other forms of possible intelligence, such as there's the controversy regarding, for example, the level of intelligence of dolphins is a very interesting one. But if I may pose a sort of a thought experiment to your listeners, we believe, not me personally, but
Mr.
science.
Lindemann,
I'm sorry?
Mr. Lindemann, we are showing a picture of your book while you are talking on this television program.
Oh, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we will also be showing on this television program glimpses from the video that you've been so kind enough to send the Cosmic Connection.
Oh, very, very good. Now, you know, I'm glad you said television program because I forgot we're on TV. I'm sorry. It's television. Yes, public television. Excuse me now. Here we are. Back at the idea was about dolphins.
Yes, sir.
The idea being that very possibly dolphins, though extremely different from us humans, may be in some sense intellectually or on a level of intelligence our equal, and may indeed have a very powerful moral sense as well, according to scientists who have studied dolphin behavior in great depth. And this poses an interesting problem. Does a dolphin qualify as an alien here on Earth, in the sense that it is a genuine high intelligence that certainly communicates with itself very, very adequately, and yet we have a terrible time communicating with them? It poses a challenge, and I think perhaps causes us to be a little bit humble with the problem of how do you actually deal with a genuinely alien intelligence if indeed the dolphin is as intelligent as we think. These are the kinds of questions we're going to be looking at. Indeed, the whole range of possible, you might say an entire spectrum of intelligence out there in the wide universe, both here on Earth and everywhere else spread out across the universe, is the purview of this organization. And I want to let your viewers and listeners know that if they are interested in finding out more, if they are already online, they can email us for further information. Just drop us a quick email, and the address is iscni@aol.com. I'll say that again, iscni@aol.com. If you're coming in from the internet, it usually works, and if you're on AOL already, that's a piece of cake. Yeah. But let us know that you're interested, and we'll get back to you with further information. You can also fax us at 805-563-8503. If you're not online yet, but you want to know what we're up to, drop us a fax. Just give us your name and address. Drop us a fax, 805-563-8503, or you can call us at 805-563-8500, and we'll get the information. Just drop us just let us know your name and address. We'll send you info. And I hope that there's a lot of your people out there that want to know about this.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. Now, the fax line one more time is 805-563-8503.
That is the fax line.
Now, the phone number that you wish to give out over the air that our listeners could contact the 2020 group, what would that be?
Okay, the 2020 group is another number altogether, and that number is 805-682-8188. to contact me at the 2020 group. So I'm now holding down two offices, two separate offices. The 2020 group for information on the publications and services of the 2020 group. I'm more than happy to hear from any of your people. 805-682-8185. And for information on ISCNI, the Institute for the Study of Contact with Non-Human Intelligence, please call 805-563-8500.
Sure. Now, Mr. Lindemann, the last time you were here in town, you were speaking with Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall.
That's correct.
That's the last time. What I'd like to ask you, we have a series of questions from some of the audience. We'd like to start at the beginning of modern ufology. And has the UFO cover-up been successful about Roswell, considering the 4 major books on the subject, including Randall and Schmidt's new book, The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell, a recent Showtime movie on Roswell, and the New Mexican Congressman Steve Schiff investigation into this Roswell incident, plus the latest Air Force announcement which explained it as Project Mogul?
Well, one thing we have to say is the cover-up was very successful for a very, very long time. It appears to be falling apart, but we must realize that the Air Force has attempted to prolong it further with their rather lame announcement on September the 8th of this year that it was, in fact, not a weather balloon, as they had said for 47 years, but now a top-secret, highly elaborate, very strange, never before heard of balloon known as Project Mogul. Now, Project Mogul did exist. This is a true fact. But was it did it result in the so-called Roswell incident? It's interesting that a man named Carl Flock, a former CIA agent, wrote a report in April of this year called Roswell in Perspective, in which he speculated, with a considerable amount of evidence, as a matter of fact, that a Project Mogul balloon might have actually resulted in the debris field that was found by Mac Brazel northwest of Roswell on or about July the 4th of 1947.
Well, I heard some interesting talk last night about the debris field, dealing that it was smaller than originally mentioned.
Well, you know, there's a whole bunch of speculation about that now. Are we
nitpicking?
I'm sorry?
Are we nitpicking?
We're not necessarily nitpicking at all, no. There's some very important questions about the debris field. We really have to take the word of Jesse Marcel Sr., who is the only person that I know of who has described the debris field in some depth. Now, he was there, of course. He was the first military man on the scene, along with Sheridan Cavett, the counterintelligence officer. But Sheridan Cavett has never admitted a thing about that. So the question is, what, was Jesse Marcel's memory and description accurate? He described a very large debris field. He described metal that had extremely strange properties, such as being able to, hit with a sledgehammer and not dent or bend. The kind of thing that couldn't possibly be accounted for by the Brazel debris field. Now, by the Mogul balloon. Now, the thing is, it is highly doubtful that there was a flight of a Mogul balloon at a time that could have resulted in the Brazel debris field. This is a very important fact which has been carefully pieced together by Kevin Randall, and he's written a paper on it already. It is highly unlikely that any of the balloon launches could have landed at the right time to produce the debris field. But even if a Mogul balloon was involved, that does not in any way change the fact that good, strong eyewitnesses saw, such as Jesse Marcel, saw materials which clearly did not come from a balloon, first of all, and second of all, even more important, a number of excellent eyewitnesses saw bodies at a different site. Now, what we may have to deal with here is the possibility that a Mogul balloon somehow got tangled up in the Roswell incident. We don't know that for a fact, but it isn't impossible to imagine. It's dubious.
I'm sure Mr. Klass would have a field day with that idea.
Oh, he loves that idea. He's already signed on. But the point is,
wonderful.
It in no way does it change the basic fact that something came down near Roswell on that weekend that resulted in major wreckage, which clearly did not come from any kind of balloon, and which resulted apparently in the recovery of some very extraordinary bodies, seen by a number of people, reported by a number of people, and even Carl Flock, the CIA agent who wrote this report called Roswell in Perspective, said that even if he was convinced that the entire debris field was a mogul balloon, he remains convinced at the same time that there were bodies somewhere else and that something else was actually discovered at Roswell. And maybe the mogul crash, if it happened at all, was purely a coincidence. So we have by no means gotten rid of Roswell. And the Air Force has, in effect, painted itself into a corner because they've said, this is the final story. We are through with this. Leave us alone. Go away. This is what it was. And they're dead wrong. There's no question they're dead wrong.
Okay. Now, after Roswell, it's alleged that a committee was put together. And then as we advance to like 1953, CIA Robertson panel concluded that, one, UFOs are not a threat to the national security, but two, UFO reporting reporting is the panel even used the word debunking for its stated policy.
Right, yeah. What really happened was, in 1953, the Robertson panel said, UFOs aren't the problem, people are the problem. We, the people, are the problem. They made it very clear that they thought public reaction to UFOs was a much bigger problem than UFOs themselves, which is why they said, make it extremely unpopular to see a UFO. Make people feel as if they see a UFO, they must be nuts. Make their, put their jobs at risk. Put their public reputation at risk. Make it seem as if only bozos and wackos see UFOs, and that was an extraordinarily successful move. The CIA made that policy. They handed that policy up to President Eisenhower. It came down as a number of Air Force and other military regulations, and the whole concept of debunking was born at that point and has been extremely successful.
And then we go to the 50s Project Blue Book and the 60s Condon Report. Seems like it was a whitewash on the conclusions that were made before the studies were began.
Well, that's correct. Ed Condon, who was a very widely respected and well-known scientist, you could almost equate him with the Carl Sagan of his day, very popular man.
Is that right?
I'm sorry?
No, I like the analogy.
Yeah, he really was. He was a very popular and respected scientist, well-known in the general public, but he, much like Sagan, said in advance of the study, in advance of the findings, he said, this, in effect, this is nonsense. The Air Force has no business getting into this UFO stuff. He even said, this is a quote, people who write UFO books should be horsewhipped. Now, with that man at the head of the study, who could imagine a study that would be objective and fair? It was ridiculous. In fact, some of the top people on the committee to do the study resigned in protest. Nonetheless, the study came out, as you know, at the end of 1968, and Air Force was very relieved because, in effect, the summary of the study said, there's nothing to this. There's no finding here that says anything about aliens or anything else.
Right.
So the Air Force can get out of it. And the Air Force, of course, at that very moment, got out of the UFO business officially.
Now, people like to bring up the fact that Dr. J. Allen Hynek was in Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
Would you please state, just in very short, I'm interested in this, the events of his employment, just the short history.
Well, the truth is, I don't know all about what Hynek was doing. He was a consultant to Blue Book. He was not on the Blue Book staff. The Blue Book staff was only 2 or 3 people.
I believe I have seen black and white photographs of him and another gentleman announcing that the Blue Book found its investigations that there were no such thing.
Absolutely. They called him in. When they made the official announcement about the Robertson panel, they called in a number of heavyweights, including Hynek, and they also called in, what was his name? Was it Harold Brown or somebody? The Secretary of Defense was somebody Brown at that point. They called him in. He was there. They brought in some heavyweights. Absolutely. Sure. Hynek was a noted astronomer. I believe he was associated at that time with Northwestern University. He had been a consultant to Blue Book for a long time. Hynek indirectly caused the Condon study to be done when he made one of the giant faux pas of all of UFO history. There was a series of sightings in Michigan in 1966. I think it was 1966. It was a very famous, widely discussed set of sightings in the state of Michigan. And Allen Hynek was called in to have a look at what was going on. And he made the famous boneheaded statement
I remember.
that possibly some of these sightings could be attributed to swamp gas.
Yes.
Well, this just raised an absolute uproar. There were hundreds of people who had seen these things and said, this guy is a nut. And the person who got the maddest was then Congressman Gerald Ford of Michigan, who later, as you know, became president.
Sure.
Congressman Gerald Ford said, enough is enough. You have insulted the great state of Michigan, okay? And when I'm not standing for it. Well, there were people already calling for congressional hearings. Gerald Ford got up on his high horse and said, it's time now to come clean on UFOs. And that scared the living daylights out of the Air Force. And they said, wait a minute, we've got a better idea. We'll appoint a blue ribbon panel. And this resulted directly in what was the Colorado University study, which came to be known as the Condon Report, Ed Condon presiding. And this was the Air Force's way of essentially getting around full-scale congressional hearings. Although there were some hearings before Congress, the Condon Report, in effect, became the final word on this matter. So Hynek, in effect, caused that to happen with his boneheaded blunder. But as we know, and I think it's very important to say this in the man's defense, he changed his mind. He saw the way this was happening, and he felt that he was hamstrung by policy, in effect, hamstrung by an almost Faustian deal he had made with these people.
Okay.
He began to see that the data showed something. And so he got out of the debunking business. He cut away from, well, of course, Blue Book ended in '69, but by 1972, Hynek was founding his own UFO organization, which has come to be known as the Center for UFO Studies.
Right.
It's in Chicago.
Of which the director now is, I believe, Don Schmidt.
Well, Don Schmidt is one of their scientific directors, yes. The overall director is a man named Mark Roediger, and Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall are closely associated with the Center for UFO Studies. That is correct.
Okay.
So anyway, Hynek, this was in effect Hynek's mea culpa, saying, you know, I've really blown it. There's something going on here. It's very important. And Hynek, for the latter part of his life, he lived until 1986, so for that roughly 14 years in there, he was, you could say, the foremost genuine scientist, an astronomer, who said the UFO subject is absolutely serious, demands, requires, and deserves a scientific inquiry, and he did his best to promote that.
All right, now, before, I'd really like to ask this question because it's come up also. It seems like we should not expect any official disclosures of UFO information for some time. As a CIA report indicates, religious, social, political, and economic institutions would be thrown into chaos. And would you please explain the concept of a metal lever?
Okay, yeah, I used the term metal lever in a series of speeches I gave during 1993 and 1994 in various parts of the country. And by a metal lever, I mean an influence that is capable of disrupting the normal course of history in an unexpected way on a global scale. That's what I mean by a metal lever. Let me say that again for everyone who's paying attention here. An influence capable of disrupting the normal course of history on a global scale in unexpected ways. Now, there are several different potential metal levers operating on this planet, but to give an obvious example, if you had a nuclear war, that would be a metal lever, because no one can tell you what will actually happen in the wake of a nuclear war. All we know is it would be really bad, worse than you can possibly imagine. But would all life die? Would we survive? What would it look like? How long would it take to rebuild? Are there any remedies? Yada, yada, yada. All of that is like in the big unknown.
Understood.
And that is why it is a metal lever. Everything, business as usual, ends the minute you drop the bombs.
Sure.
Okay? Now, there are other metal levers out there, but I would like to say that although we're not talking about global destruction here, the possibility of widespread human contact with non-human intelligence on this planet in our time is a potential metal lever.
Sure.
The social, political, psychological, religious, and historical consequences are unmeasurable, okay? They're so big. We don't know if that's going to happen, but we can say there's a good chance it will happen. But that the changes, that the impacts would be that large. I am absolutely dead certain that we are seeing in our midst right now human contact with non-human intelligence that we typically term alien, and that this is going to increase. But because the presumed consequences are unpredictable and potentially very large, there is no political advantage to just making an announcement. What they have to do, and what I believe they are doing, I think there's evidence all around us, attempting in a sense to bring us along, to indoctrinate us, to break it to us gently, subliminally for the most part, to create a, you might say, a cushion, a feather pillow into which we can all fall when we see the aliens and we keel over and go, oh my God, there's aliens here. We'll land in the feather pillow of all of this prior preparation, all the movies, all the ads, all the TV shows, all the books, all the tapes, everything that's out there, and we will not be shocked out of our pants. I have seen lots of evidence that people are, in a sense, subliminally ready even for the incredibly bizarre concept that other human beings, people right around them, their family members, their business associates, are being abducted by aliens. I am convinced today that there is a general subliminal recognition that this is occurring. And the trick will be, when it becomes clearly evident, it not be a total crisis.
Well, is the biggest secret about UFOs also with the alien presence is that have they always been here?
Well, that may be, you see. That's actually, I think that may be true, and I know some other researchers who are thinking along the same line, that although there is a resurgence of a certain kind of phenomenon right now, it appears to be something which has been cyclical throughout many, many ages. And there is evidence of contact in deep antiquity. Many of the great ancient cultures, depending on how you read their scriptures and depending on how you interpret some of the very unusual artifacts that they left around, you could say, well, boy, oh boy, did these guys have contact with, some sort of advanced intelligence? The chances are very good they did. And this is not only high cultures like the Egyptians, who show some signs of that, or even some of the great South American cultures such as the Incas, but you have some cultures which today we would term primitive, such as the Dogon tribe in Mali, in Africa, who have clearly got information in their religious belief system that they shouldn't have. They should not know some of the really interesting, detailed information about objects in deep space that they know. Particularly, they know a great deal about the star system of Sirius. And when we found out that these people know this information, a couple of anthropologists from France went down there to the jungle and said, well, how do you know this stuff? And it took them 10 years to get an answer, because the people, the shamans who had the really serious information, hey, they don't let dumb French white men come in and just ask questions. It takes a long time to get these people to trust you.
Sure.
And this is very important information to them. This is the most important information they've got. And it's very important to us as well, because here's a tribe that, by all estimates, you'd say this is primitive. This is aboriginal here, but they can tell you all about the star system of Sirius. They knew it was a binary system 1,000 years before Western science knew it. They knew exactly how long those two stars take to go around each other. They knew that one of them was a white dwarf. They had a different name for it, but they described it correctly. And we didn't even know such a structure existed until the 1860s. But they knew it 1,000 years ago. And you say, well, how the hell did they know that? Pardon my French. Sure. And they said, well, how they knew that was that they were told by the Syrians, the beings who came from Sirius. And then they said something else interesting. They said those beings were amphibious beings, great wise beings who were like men by day and fish by night. Well, it's very intriguing, because the Babylonians said that they had a run-in with beings from Sirius as well, great wise beings who were like men by day and fish by night. Now, this is extraordinary. Did that mean that the Babylonians and the Dogon had intercourse way back 2,000 years ago? We have no evidence of that. Does that mean the Syrians were sort of going around meeting and greeting all over the planet? Maybe, but it's extraordinary that two completely separate cultures who had no contact that we know of describe the Syrians the same way. And then you say, well, this is very quaint. This is very, this sounds like legend, lore, myth. Well, that's very nice, but we don't have a better explanation for how these primitives know this stuff.
Just something to go along with that. In the 1960s, the super secret NATO report titled The Assessment concluded that Earth was spied upon by extraterrestrial races, and who appear to be peaceful, technologically advanced, and are increasing their contact with Earth's inhabitants. Also, the 59 Brookings Institute report stated that alien artifacts, when explained, found, should be covered up, and this may explain the government's explanation about the face on Mars, and also like the particular technological advances that can come out of this or that we've already had. I've heard a conversation stating that technology as we know it today was started 30 years ago. Is this correct? Close?
Technology as we know it today started 30 years ago?
There are certain technologies that are made that are not told to the public right when they're discovered.
Well, there are
hiding
many
information.
Yeah, there are many technologies like that. I think it's fair to say that some of those technologies we don't find out until 30 years after they're found, if that's what you mean, yes. I think there's a whole separate track of science, and I think that a lot of it can be traced from approximately the World War II era, which really sets it back about 50 years.
Sure. And with the faces on Mars, we're dealing with Richard Hoagland.
Yeah.
He had a video out, it's out, dealing with the faces on Mars, and now the moon issue.
Yeah.
Of spires and buildings on the moon.
Yeah.
Well, what have we heard about this from other than Mr. Hoagland himself? What is the UFO community out there thinking, or the 2020 group itself?
Well,
I'm sure being down there near JPL, you have seen these photos.
Well, I'll have to speak for myself on that because these are matters of great controversy.
Sure. Absolutely.
As regards the alleged anomalous structures on the moon, I have seen Richard Hoagland make some presentations on this, and his presentations are wondrously impressive, but it is not clear to me that the data as yet adds up in a completely convincing way. Now, that does not mean he's wrong. He's out on a limb. He's making some bold assumptions, and some people think he's right on the money, and other people who are just as smart think he's not. But that's a matter that I'm going to leave to other people who do that work for a living.
Sure.
As far as the Mars anomalies are concerned, I think we're far enough down the line now that we can say with some confidence that probably there are artificial structures on Mars. I think Hoagland has made a case there, but he's by no means alone. There are some other people who've done extremely important work. Mark Carlotto with his high-tech digital imaging, and Vincent DiPietro, and
what was that? The person that dealt with the ground. He just had a recent guest with him, a geological
Who are you speaking of now?
Pardon me?
Who are you speaking of?
Of Richard Hoagland. He had another member with him that was looking over geological structure on the moon.
Well, I know that one geologist who's come forward in Richard Hoagland's defense about the moon anomalies is a man named Bruce Cornett. And
that would be the gentleman.
Yeah, and Bruce Cornett has argued that in his view, Hoagland may well be right. Now, you see, this is fine. I think that, these are extraordinary claims, and the film evidence, unfortunately, as I'm sure Hoagland himself will gladly admit, the film evidence is hard to interpret because the quality of the prints is rather poor, as a matter of fact, and the distance to the anomalies from the camera lens is extremely long. I mean, we're talking about lenses that don't have the kind of resolution we have today by a long shot, and they were shooting these anomalies at 250 miles away. Okay, very far away.
Sure.
So they're making huge blow-ups of film that is quite grainy when you get up to that level of enlargement, and it takes some real interpreting. I'm saying it's not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that we've got much stronger imaging data from Mars, okay, and a great deal of study has been done on Mars. Now, if you've got anomalies on Mars, if you've got artificial structures on Mars, then it would be great to find out you've also got them on the moon, but also not necessarily important, because the very fact of having them on Mars says all you need to say about the prospect that some other intelligence capable of building huge structures was there a very long time ago, and based on what we take to be a face on Mars. If indeed they created a statue which was in any way resembling themselves, we would have to say, wait a minute, this is most interesting. These guys were humanoids. They looked like us. And there they were, who knows how long ago. It could be anywhere from a few thousand to 10, 20, 30, 40, or even 150 or 200,000 years ago that they were there. But in any case, with that kind of capability on a nearby planet, we would have to say, well, the question, are we alone, has been answered definitively. The question, can they get here, has been answered definitively. The question, have they got this great technology? Yes. And more important than that, were they here a long time ago? Yes. And that means, whoa, our entire sense of history is toppled right then and there.
Metal lever, right?
Yeah, that's a metal lever, right. And for that reason, the problem of anomalies on Mars is very much the same problem as flying saucers landing on the White House lawn. Let's face it, it's a different version of the same problem.
Sure. Mr. Lindemann, Michael, I have some guests here that would like to ask a question or two and converse and get in on some topics here. We have a gentleman, a caller to the show, Jay. Jay, you had Michael Lindemann.
Yes. Michael.
Hello.
Hello. Let's continue that train of thought a little bit. You predicted once that it would be found that the human race developed throughout the world in many places, not just one place, which is currently believed, and a lot of material in science magazines has kind of indicated that the science community is going this way.
Going in the direction of
that
what?
The human race developed simultaneously in many different places.
Well, it does, yes. You see, now this is one of the very embarrassing things. You see, we want to be able to say that Darwinian evolution, good old clunky Darwinian evolution, works, just the way Darwin said it did, and one day something resembling a human being was born from something resembling an ape, and on it goes from there, and from there on, the superior human-type creature spread out across the world. But the fossil record does not support that. It would be great if it did, but it doesn't. The fossil record shows huge leaps in evolution that we do not understand. It shows that the appearance of full-blown new species out of nowhere, in some cases apparently in widely separated areas, such as some in Africa, some in China, some in northern Europe or Central Europe, and we're saying, well, how did this happen? It takes a very long time, as far as we know, for these migrations to occur, and yet if our carbon dating or the various datings that are done for objects that age, if it's even remotely close to accurate, we have to say there isn't time for what we regard as normal migration, and there certainly isn't time for the kind of evolutionary jumps that we see in the fossil record. And up against that, we have to say, well, good grief, what would cause that kind of anomalous, widespread appearance of new species?
Sure.
And we're stuck with the possibility that that occurred because they were engineered. And that, of course, that's just like, whoa, forget it. That makes scientists just cringe and run out of the room tearing their hair. But, they're up against a tough spot here because the fossil record does not support the theory of gradual evolution. It just doesn't. And we do not see time for the evolution of modern man out of what we thought to be less developed species, and we do not see time for migrations. And so
this would upset religious matters intensely.
Oh yes, indeed. Well, of course, the creationists, in a certain sense, would take comfort from this, but, and I'm not preaching creationism here.
I understand, and it's a funny thing. A lot of people say, they believe in the Bible, and then they say they believe in Darwin. It's like a thing of, it's not something you learn. It's just something, for me particularly, I believe I have to go with Darwin. I don't know why. It's just a funny belief.
Well, now, Darwin...
Wars, not wars, but heated arguments of just for saying things like that.
The thing is that Darwin had some brilliant ideas which are not necessarily wrong.
Okay.
But as with all theories, they must be modified to take account of the real evidence. Isaac Newton had some brilliant ideas. He understood all kinds of stuff about how apples fall out of trees and clunk you on the head. He figured out that there were forces involved there, and that there are forces relating to mechanical motion and the transfer of heat and so forth, and he was right, okay? But he did not figure out enough to describe some of the great structures in the universe and some of the great laws that govern the motion of very large structures or the motion of extremely small structures. What that required was a completely different kind of physics, which today we call quantum physics and relativity, okay? And with those tools, you have a different picture. They don't contradict what Newton said, but they greatly expanded because some of what Newton saw just didn't fit. Now, the thing is, or some of what Newton said didn't fit the big picture. Now, here we have a situation where Darwin's theory does explain some things, and this explains them very satisfactorily, and it appears that evolution is a real force in life. And I'm very satisfied with that notion, but we're talking about the evolution of the human species here, okay? And there may be something special going on here. We don't know why the human species evolved as it did, when it did, and where it did.
Sure.
And we're trying to figure that out. But if you ask all kinds of ancient people, judging from their scriptures, and if you ask today's modern people who are having contacts and abduction experiences, they all say the same thing. They're saying, look, we're told over and over again that the great beings from the sky came in and they modified us. Okay, they worked on us.
Allegedly, what I believe Bob Lazar stated, 65 DNA changes.
Bob Lazar said he saw this information, and it squares very nicely with what some of the abductees are saying, and it squares very nicely with what the Sumerians said about where they came from, and where a lot of the other ancient people say they came from, that the beings from the sky came in. And indeed, our own Bible says, and the Elohim created us in their image. Now, this is important because the Elohim, the creator gods, plural, not God, not Yahweh, no, the Elohim, in Genesis 2, check it out, said, that this was a group of beings, okay?
Sure.
So even our own Bible is very ambivalent about this. I mean, ambivalent in the sense that we would like to think that we're talking about one God, but even our own Bible does not speak of one God. It speaks of a plural God. And indeed, the concept of plural gods is found all over the world. And was it actually some kind of alien incursion, what we would today term an alien incursion, that came in and did, genetic experiments, or maybe even planted versions of themselves here? We don't know this, but I'm saying we need to have a dispassionate, down-to-earth investigation of this. And I believe we're going to find some extraordinary things which are going to upset a lot of people.
Well, China has, I've heard on the news, the AP, China has called for a worldwide UFO investigation. And I believe Bryce has a question for you, Michael, dealing with something. Bryce?
Oh, how about Eric? Can I ask one?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Michael, I know that we've been waiting to see you on the show, and I'd just like to thank Cosmo for having you on. And the last couple of weeks, you've been waiting for this, so thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you.
One of the things that I was kind of curious about, I know last weekend on Art Bell's show that we get, Dreamland here, we get it on Sunday.
Right, yeah.
And Linda Howe, who starts the show for him, was on there and talked to a guy named John Vasquez. And that whole situation, he talked about when he was in the Army back in '72, and he had some experience back then, was kind of interesting. But I guess what is more curious to me, and I'm just curious if anything else has come about, is that he was supposedly was given some packets of information through some Freedom of Information Act forms that he sent in, and those packets of information or information came back to him from the government that apparently documented a lot of UFO sightings or something. And my question is, are you familiar with any of this stuff? I haven't heard much of anything about it.
No, as a matter of fact, I'm not familiar with it, and I'm hoping to speak with Linda Howe about it very soon. There was one report out of San Diego about 5 or 6 weeks ago now that apparently mentioned the same thing, but I tried to track it down and couldn't find it. Whatever this is, this guy, Vasquez, if he's for real,
sure.
it really has not gotten out and about very much. And I'm going to have to just say, you know, wait and see on that, because frankly, I can't give you anything more to go on.
Well, I imagine he's being inundated right now with phone calls. I understand there's a gentleman down there who's an anchor on the local Channel 10 down there who's representing Mr. Vasquez.
Oh, is he actually representing him? Now
well, I'm not going to go as far as saying representing. Mr. Vasquez has asked him for his help.
Okay, well, that's possible. Yeah, I know those people down at Channel 10, and as a matter of fact, it's interesting. I'm not sure why this happens, but the guys down at Channel 10 in San Diego have actually been very good on the UFO subject.
All right.
And
like George Knapp out of Las Vegas.
Very similar. And I wish there were more channels like that in various parts of the country doing good, you know, reasonably good quality reporting.
Well, we're trying to do that right here. We've been on the channel of CAN for a year and a half.
Well, that's great. I applaud you, and I hope that we see more of this.
Such distinguished guests as yourself, Michael, Linda Moulton Howell, and in studio with Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall. We look to have some more.
Good, marvelous.
And the audience here in Portland is very enthusiastic. Jay.
And we hope to have you back someday too, Michael.
Very soon.
Be happy to.
And we would like to have you here on the program here also. Jay, continue.
What can we talk about now, Michael, the relation between covert weapon development and alien technology? Maybe tie this in with Area 51, Bob Lazar's accusations about back engineering, which is, could we say, been pretty well substantiated?
Well, we could say that if the Roswell incident occurred, then certainly we have been doing back engineering for close to, you know, for at least 48 years. And I believe that that is the case. I believe that there have been some substantial developments in that area. I have heard from people who are convinced that we have even developed something on the order of an anti-gravity type of propulsion drive.
Michael, you've heard from more than just one person who gives the same story as Bob Lazar does?
Well, let's say that I would have to say that secondhand. I have talked repeatedly with George Knapp about this and know that he's uncovered a number of other witnesses. I've also talked with somebody at a major magazine who really doesn't want to be named or even alluded to, who says that he has information that convinces him that somewhere deep inside the military establishment, they know full well, A, about aliens and alien technology, and B, that they have been able to replicate some of this technology and create some very interesting propulsion systems and other sorts of systems. Now, we also, of course, have some more conventional aircraft that officially don't exist, such as the so-called Aurora, which may not be its true name, but we're certainly flying some things which do not officially exist and which are constantly denied. There's no question that our technology is years ahead of what we have reported. Indeed, even the SR-71 Blackbird, which is well known to any airplane enthusiast, no one was ever truthful about how fast that plane could fly. They never told us the incredible capabilities of that aircraft, which of course is 1960s, early 60s technology.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
The official speed record for that plane is about 2,300 and some odd miles an hour, which is really moving right along. But I've talked to two people who worked on the development of the SR-71, and they said that they knew for an absolute fact that that plane could do 4,000 miles an hour. And that it had capabilities even back in the early 60s when the thing didn't even officially exist.
Now, sir, this is what I alluded to at the beginning when I was asking about that 30-year technological holdback
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that there's a parallel track which allows for the development of very arcane technologies which are not admitted and which are funded with deep black money that has no strings attached and no name attached, and you can't find it to save your life. And even Congress doesn't know it exists, and indeed even most of the military establishment doesn't know it exists. So we have to have some compassion frankly, for some of the military people who don't even know the darn thing exists. When the SR-71 went into service, the Air Force didn't know it existed. That is a stone fact, and it might shock some people that the airplane would go into service and the Air Force wouldn't know it.
Wouldn't know it, sure.
It was strictly built for the CIA, and the Air Force didn't even get their version of it until years later.
That's amazing. Eric, you have one more question, please. We're almost out of time.
Well, I was just curious about channelers like Lisa Royale and
absolutely.
I know in Portland that seems to be a thing a lot of people are into, probably all over the United States, all over the world probably. But I just wondered what Michael's take was on channelers and channeling. So many of them seem to go in and out of the, well, UFO kind of field. I just wondered what his take on them was.
Well, channeling poses a real dilemma because channeling is essentially unverifiable, but that does not necessarily make it entirely untrue or inaccurate. It's just very, very unverifiable, and therefore you always have to try to find some other kind of corroborating information. If you want to use channeling as one way of, let's say, establishing a lead or establishing a possibility, I'm okay with that. But different various channelers, I think, tell very different stories. Many of them seem to be, frankly, a little bit unreliable as people, never mind what they're saying as channels. And I really do feel that we have to be extremely careful with channeled information. However, I think in, let's say, in fairness to the great mystery of life and the great possibilities of the universe, we cannot absolutely rule out that some people have channeled experiences which are legitimate and which produce real information. But we are stuck with the fact that this information remains subjective and unverifiable, and that's the bottom line.
Now, Mr. Lindemann, we're showing your address. The area, the telephone number is 805-586 or 686.
Now, what are we talking about for ISCNI?
For the 2020 group.
The 2020 group is 805-682-8185.
We have a misprint on our television screen, ladies and gentlemen. It is 682
8185.
And that's for the 2020 group, and they can contact you.
That is correct.
Can they receive the book, 6 Viewpoints?
Yes, they can. Anyone who will send me a stamped self-addressed envelope, I'll send them information about the 2020 group, and I'll send them information about ISCNI in case they're interested.
Absolutely, and your new video here also accompanying the book.
Yes, yes.
We've been showing little excerpts from that during the program as you were speaking.
Thank you. Well, it's been fun, and hello to all the good people of Portland, and thank you for doing your show.
Thank you very much, sir. We'd like to give that address out at 3463 State Street, Box 264, Santa Barbara, California, 93105. Mr. Lindemann, what are you up to next?
Well, as I said, what I'm up to next is I'm buried up to my eyeballs in launching this new online service called the Institute for the Study of Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. So for the foreseeable future, I'll be working very hard on that and bringing in some of my very esteemed colleagues, Linda Howe,
I look forward to
John
that, yes.
Carpenter.
That would be John Carpenter, Linda Howe.
Linda Howe, John Carpenter, Carla Turner. We're looking to see Stanton Friedman get involved next year. George Knapp has expressed an interest. We're looking to bring in a lot of good people. So any of your viewers who are online, please let me know. I'll be happy to send the information. Gave you all those phone numbers, but you can just contact me at the number that you just gave, 805-682-8185. I'll send them all the information.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you very much, my friend, for being on this program, for enlightening us, and I have learned some very educational properties here on some of the thinking of yourself and your cohorts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We want you to stay in touch with the Cosmic Connection so we can know when the next time you'll come up here. And there's a lot of other interesting things that you talk about that we didn't have even a chance to broach on this program.
Well, that's true. Time flies.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Michael.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's about it. We're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank the La Costa Mexican Restaurant for supplying the entire crew with its wonderful Mexican cuisine. I want to thank Roberto Aguilera and Chef Alex Gonzalez. Wonderful restaurant, family-style restaurant, fresh cooking every day, and that's the La Costa Mexican Restaurant. Also, I want to thank my friend Billy Goodman. We have at the Moosehead, coming up November 18th, Misdemeanor, and November 19th, that's Steve Johns, my friend, out there at the Moosehead. Also, on November 25th and 26th, it will be Hertz at the Moosehead. And my friends, Porcelain God will be playing at the Marriott Hotel for the Thanksgiving benefit, November 25th. Also, want to thank my friend Billy Goodman, Suzanne, Erica, all you fine friends out there, Ty, for watching, supporting this program. Don, I have your tape. It's very ready. So with that, we're going to listen to some music from Soren. Our next program is November 27th at 6 o'clock. November 27th at 6 o'clock. Maybe we'll see Dennis. I want to thank my guests, Jay, Eric. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming down here and being a part of this program. Michael Lindemann, ladies and gentlemen, you can write us at The Cosmic Connection. Send us a self-addressed stamped envelope. We can make the video and the booklets of UFO 101 and UFO 102. And with that, we're going to go out and say goodnight, ladies and gentlemen. November 27th, our next show live. It'll be you and us live on the phones with The Cosmic Connection. Thank you very much. Soren, take it away, my friends.
Going down another winding road. Never knew I could be so far from home. Today's gone, tomorrow is my pride. Here I stand still asking why. People live, people die, just like traffic on the freeway of life. Some people give, some people try, some people say they do, but they're just telling lies. Just a drifter, drifting day to day. Seen some good times, seen some bad. Some of us don't realize what we've had or what we have. All the time keeps ticking, Mother Nature cries. Some of us don't listen, have to see it with our eyes. People live, people die, just like traffic on the freeway of life. Some people give, some people try, some people say they do, but they're just telling lies. Just a drifter, drifting day to day. Who would have thought it would turn out this way? Far away. People live, people die, just like traffic on the freeway of life. Some people give, some people try, some people say they do, but they're just telling lies. Just a drifter, drifting day to day. Who would have thought it would turn out this way? Just a drifter, drifting day to day. Going down another winding road. Never knew I could be so far from home. Today's gone, tomorrow here's my cry. Here I stand still asking why.